And Jason, it's great to have you here with us today, and welcome. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you. Let's get this up and going. Awesome. You guys see that all right? Welcome. Thanks everyone for showing up today. Appreciate your guys' time and attention. We get to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, and it's both missions and technology. I use an intentionally broad topic here because when you're engaging with technology, it can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. Each organization is using technology in some specific ways. And I think there's ways in which that can be improved for every organization. And hopefully that everyone who's watching today is going to get some value that they can take action upon, that there will be actionable advice from this. And then, so the goal is that you guys are going to learn maybe a practical framework, and we're going to focus on AI. And then we're going to use that and look at that on maybe things you should look out for, ways that you can enhance your communication, and things that you guys can improve. And maybe you guys are already using AI, maybe you're not. Feel free to hit the little raise hand mark if you're using AI already. No pressure if you don't want to hit that. But let's dive in. I see one raised hand over there. So I do want to make a note. I've got some bonus content. There's just way too much content to include in these slides. And so there will be a little URL that you guys can visit at the end that I will show you guys, where I've got a whole bunch of different ideas that are like out of the box, things that you guys can apply to your organizations, along with some great resources that I recommend for AI. So moving on, a little bit about me. Celebrating 11 years of marriage last weekend, and we've got 3 kids, 7, 5, and 1. Have a BA in communications, minor in missions from SAGU in Waxahachie, if anyone knows where that is. It's a mouthful. I've got a background doing missions, television, film, production, some marketing, some design, church. Got to travel with a comedian for a period of time. Comedian Michael Jr. is, it's this interesting. I saw that video at the beginning, right? We were talking about business as missions. And in a lot of ways, that's what Michael is doing in the comedy space, which I just love what he's doing. He's utilizing this platform of comedy to use laughter to open up people's hearts and then deposit a message. And one of the years we were traveling around, I think we saw 14,000 salvations at altar calls, just traveling around the country, which was just an amazing experience getting to work with him and for a number of years. And we still work together on a few projects. So currently the founder of Creative Nomads. We're an agency. It was given in the introduction there, but an agency that serves missions organizations and nonprofits. We do branding and web design, building a digital foundation, and then we expand to help build kind of channels of communication to kind of really engage donors and communicate. And something I've seen over the years of working with organizations of kind of all sizes is that it is a challenge to engage your donors, to tell your story consistently. And so that's what we're really passionate about. And so I've had the opportunity to work with organizations around the world. And we just launched a website for Avail Mission. They're based out of the UK. It was a really fun project. These guys are like this grit, the authentic missions, or they've been doing it for like 50, 60 years. And I'm sure you guys have known exactly who I'm talking about. If you've met anyone from the UK, they've just got this real sense of grit and agenda to serve the will of God in their lives, which is just beautiful. Fun fact, I've seen Everest in person and ascended to Island Peak in Imjatse in Nepal, 20,225 feet. And then a little bit of a proof just to show you that I was there. All right, let's dive in. So the importance of effective communication in missions work. I think all of you guys being on this webinar obviously know the value of communications in missions work. All of you are in some capacity to do communications with your organizations. We all know how important that is. And then at the end of the day, it's like, what is communication? Communication is the transmitting and the receiving of the message and understanding it. And it's like, we can say a lot of things, we can use a lot of words, but unless it's being received in a meaningful way, it's not real effective communication. And a lot of times when we're dealing with a mission and we're trying to evoke emotion, and that emotion is what's going to get engagement. And now as we're dealing with technology, I think that's kind of a sticking point for a lot of us, is how do we leverage technology and still evoke that emotion that we're trying to get? And so one of the first times that, and has nothing to do with technology, but I think it has everything to do with business as missions here, is the first time that I was wowed. I remember the first time I saw missions done differently. And I was sitting in the room and hearing a presentation from a missionary family who is standing in front of the stage. And I'm sure all of you guys have been in front of these presentations. You're hearing a pitch, you're hearing the stories and the importance of their work. And there was a light bulb moment. And that light bulb moment happened when they shared an entirely new paradigm of doing missions. And that missions was this place where they had partnered with the local people of Tanzania and they were doing business as missions. They were using that. Now, this is no longer a new idea, but 20 years ago when I was hearing this for the first time, like it totally transformed the concept that I was thinking about missions. And all of a sudden, it opens up this door in which we can then do missions in different ways than what we traditionally thought missions looked like. So that being the case, digital technology is a communication tool. All of you guys in your jobs, you're using email, you're doing text messages, you're doing live events, you're doing webinars, you're doing social media posts, you're engaging in, you're sending print mailers, you're sending postcards, you're sending all of these pieces of medium. And there's this great quote, it's like the medium is the message. And it has an impact on the message that's being communicated and how it's being received. And so we have to be aware of that. Right now, there's a really big push in marketing called omni-channel communication, right? And an omni-channel communication requires you to be in all of these places. And it used to be, we want to see a message 3 times. Now it's 5 times. Now it's 7 times. Now it's up to 14 times that someone has to see your message before it really sticks with them. And that's the real big push for omni-channel communication. The challenge with that is resources. How do you guys create all of those pieces of content, all of those pieces of communication that are going to be able to hit all of those individual channels with intentionality, with originality? Like, it is a big challenge that a lot of organizations are facing of how to multiply their communications in an effective way. And a lot of times, I think it's just adding to a lot of noise. And I had this change in perspective recently. I don't know how many of you guys, and you guys can do your show of hands or whatever, but like, how many of you love social media? This is interesting for me, just to see, but how many of you guys, like, if you could spend every day for like 40 minutes, an hour on social media, that would just light up your world. Like, you love it. Okay, we've got some love there. That's great. There's not a ton out of the attendees, but maybe the buttons are a little slow. That's okay. But for me, I'll be honest, like, social media is often a challenge unless I'm scrolling on Reels, right? Social media, just like coming up with content, coming up with what to post in all of these places, for a while there was a challenge, and it started to drain me. And I had this moment, I was sitting in a sermon, and like, have you ever been in a message, you're at church, and like a message just connects to exactly where you are, and you feel that conviction, like, I know it needs to be a little bit different. And so for me, that happened a few weeks ago. Again, this was like a reconfirming of this change in perspective. Was, instead of social media or online communications or these things becoming a chore, becoming something that we have to do, it's actually an opportunity where we can bring hope, where we can be hope carriers, where it's not just like, I think it becomes overwhelming sometimes where we're like, we have to do all of X, Y, and Z, and we have to post on all these places and all this original things. And then we have to comment, we have to engage. But if we can flip our mindset, and in which it, like, instead of retreating, it's to advance and to really engage on these new social platforms in a way that brings hope. And I think we have to be strategic in how we do that, and maybe look at your resources, and we'll get to that in a second, to see where it makes the most sense, the right return on investment of your time and your resources to do this. But it's this change in perspective, like, can we bring hope? Instead of it just being a place where noise is put out there, or it's a place of distraction, or it's a place to get lost, can we share hope in a meaningful way? So, leveraging AI, there's this huge push, and we'll focus on this for a little while today, to use AI. I feel like every time I open up social media, I'm seeing, and maybe it's just from the people I'm following, is, how to use AI in X, Y, and Z. Here's 150 different prompts that you can use to accomplish this task. Here's marketing prompts. Here's how to write your emails. Here's all of these pieces are everyone's in AI right now. You're seeing it in generating images, you're seeing it in video, you're seeing it in sales, you're seeing it in customer service. AI is everywhere. And the challenge that I have for us is, before we think of AI as a substitute for us, I want it to think about it in a way that it amplifies our efforts. Used properly, and this comes back to, how does engaging with donors work? As we all know, it's like this time-old sense of things in which relationships are king. And if you are trying to communicate and you're trying to hit all of these social media platforms, you're trying to do all these communications, if you lose the relational aspect, if you're just putting out content, it's not going to work. You're not going to capture that emotion. You're not going to evoke the response that you're looking for. And so that is this balancing line of like, AI cannot be used as a substitute, but it absolutely can amplify your message and your story and your efforts. So when you're looking at all of your communications, what is a good process, a good framework that you need to go through in order to identify where you should start applying AI in your process? I think it's kind of like a shiny object syndrome. Sometimes we just want to look at everything like, ooh, that's fun. That's fun. I, for me, will just play with new AI tools just to see how it's going to be effective or how we could use it in this new idea. But this framework is fun. If you ever go to 7-Eleven, it's the ICEE framework. And that just stands for identifying your needs, choosing the tools, implementing, and then evaluating. So looking at your communication strategy, looking at your current team and the resources you have available, where are the areas that you know you could do better? And then looking at the current available AI applications and tools that are there, where is that matchup? That's in that identify. And then you got to choose the tools. You want to be careful, because each part of building out an AI, application to what you're doing can be either labor intensive or not super effective. So you want to be careful not to try and do AI for everything, because it's not a perfect, like I said, it's not a replacement, but it absolutely can amplify your work. And then you want to implement it, and then you want to evaluate it. And so one of the things, if you're not doing it, you should be doing A/B testing. You should be looking at emails with AI, without AI. Like, what is that open rate? Is it as effective? And I think you want to aim for your quality not dropping. If you can amplify your efforts and you can get the same exact results, that's baseline. And then what you really want to do is keep playing with it and tweaking with it until you can start improving your metrics. So at the bare minimum, you have to maintain, because what it's first doing is removing the human resource of like your time. So you're buying back your time. And if you can maintain the exact same response, perfect. But that's not the final goal. That's like goal number one. Then you got to start working on dialing in the prompts and dialing in the results so that you're going to see growth. And we'll get to that next, which is dialing in the prompts. So anywhere you look, like I mentioned earlier, you can download 150. I think HubSpot emailed me earlier today and said they now have AI built into their platform, and you can now use AI everywhere, whether it's being powered by ChatGPT or Bard or Jasper. There's a ton of them out there. And so you can download all the prompts that you need. You can accomplish all your marketing tasks, your communication tasks, literally just talk to chat and say, I want this. But you'll see that it's not always effective. And so here's kind of a process that you can use when you're doing any sort of prompt. And this process will help personalize your prompts. And every time I've used this, I've taken it to these AI content testers. You can Google this. You'll find at least 5 or 6 online that are like, test and see if this was written with AI. Every time that I've written something with AI and done this process, it's passed every single AI prompt questionnaire checker. So what that says to me is either A, all of the checkers out there are incorrect, or B, this process personalizes the results in such a way that it actually is good content. And that's going to be like step 4 or 5 right there, is fact check, right? And that's going to be important. So let's start with the beginning. Clarify your intent. So at the very beginning, you want to set the stage and the framework for what you need ChatGPT or your chat AI bot to accomplish for you. And so you're going to specify the work that is required. Let's say you're writing an email to your donor list and say, I am writing a donor email, and I'm going to be sorry for the screaming in the background if you can hear that. I'm writing an email to my donor list. This is our monthly newsletter, and we are going to be communicating about X, Y, and Z. So that's giving the intent. And then you're going to give a little bit more context, and you're going to say, now there's 2 parts to the context. You need to prime the chatbot to let them know who you are. And so how you do that is there's a few different ways of doing that, but you want to create a brand voice. And a brand voice is going to be based upon your organization's, mission statement, who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And that way, it's almost like if you've ever done a brand guide, you'll have a tone or a voice sheet or a voice style guide. You need that for ChatGPT or with any chat AI bot that you use, so it can recreate your tone on a regular basis without you having to dial that in every single time. And I'm going to hit back. You can't and shouldn't, and I'll get to this in a second why you shouldn't just use one really, really long continuous thread with ChatGPT. Even though it does retain some context, there's a limit to the quality that is achieved when you just use one really, really long thread. So that's why it's important, once you've created like this kind of block content, like this template, I would say, of like, what is the voice guide for your organization? Save that, put that in your note file, put that in a Word doc, and kind of iterate on that. And you could even use the chat prompt to kind of help you develop that voice guide. And then you're going to say, going back to the example of your email newsletter, this is what I'm trying to create. Here's my voice guide and the context, and we want to invoke this emotion. And so that's intent and context, and then personality. So personality is part of your voice style. And so, but you can say, I want to write this with compassion. I want to write this informatively. I want to write this with a way that is engaging this type of audience. And that's the other piece in the context, is not only can you create a voice style guide around your own organization, but then if you have a donor persona that has been created, that's where you can also be putting that in the mix and saying, I want to talk to this donor persona in my messaging. And so by the time you got here, your prompt might look really, really long, but you've got these reusable pieces of your organization brand style guide and your tone, and then your donor persona. Those are reusable. You can use those over and over and over in such a way that's going to be effective for you. Now, what's next? Prime it with your data. So that's going to be like, what is the pertinent information? So again, going back to our example of we're writing an email, this is the story, X, Y, and Z happened. And then here's the other part of the story that happened. We want to make sure that we communicate that 56% of our capital campaign has been reached. And we're super excited about that. Bullet form list, and that's going to get put into the data. So once you've got all of that block of content to prime with your AI, you're going to get such personalized results that there's no way it's going to feel like some canned piece of technology wrote it, because you've primed it with who you are, how you want to communicate, who you're speaking to, and the information that you're communicating. And so what you get out is a direct result of what you put in. And then you want to fact check. So if you've played with AI before, you may have experienced things like made up information, incorrect information, and then just responses that make absolutely no sense. And there's been multiple kind of research articles that have come out of like, at a certain point in the engaging with AI, like it becomes 95% wrong. Like the facts are just out the window. It's making things up. And that's because of the way that AI models are built. It's actually, ChatGPT for specific use is actually built on a tangent, which means it can actually create things that don't exist. It will, and then if you ever ask it for current events, it'll tell you that ChatGPT is not helpful for anything past 2021, and they will move that forward a little bit at a time, but it's not for current events. And so that's very important to know that whatever has been put out from your AI, do not take it as gospel. Do not just take it at face value. You always have to double check it. And so it's really, ChatGPT specifically is not a great research assistant. I will say other platforms are a little bit more designed for this. And there are some recent, if you pay for OpenAI, you can actually add plugins, and plugins that can then be better research assistants, plugins that will pull from like online research libraries and research articles. So there's some really good plugins now for ChatGPT that will allow it to extend past those previous limitations. But going back to this idea of like, don't let the thread get too long. You want to restart that thread probably, after you've done 15 prompts, 10 prompts. If you start noticing it gets a little off cue, like start a new thread, because at a certain point, the skewed data just goes off the rail. It's not helpful anymore. It's just something ghost in the code. It's not processing it correctly. Start over. And that's where having those blocks of primed content is going to be really helpful when you're going back to start a new check, because some of the value in like keeping the same thread going, right, is like, oh, it already knows everything. Like I've given it context. It can just give me the right answers. Well, at a certain point, that data goes off the rails. And so you want to be careful about how long you'll use a thread. So that's this last point of start from scratch on occasion. You want to make sure that you do that. So there's a whole Atlantic article that you can see. So like, just go check it out and you'll kind of notice where the value is of restarting. All right, going back. Thoughts looking forward. So the relationships are still king. I said this earlier, we're not looking at AI as a substitute for the work of connection. We're going to utilize technology to serve and amplify your mission. And then we want to do personalization at the next level. There's this really cool thing in marketing, and it's been around for at least a decade, which is just advanced personalization. And if you segment your email list, if you put your donors in certain personas and group them by that information, it's already out there that you can communicate to them in those segments with specific messaging. But AI allows you to do that at scale, and it allows you to you can use it to filter your information. You could upload CSVs and say, hey, find the commonalities. You can use it to parse data, massive amounts of data that would normally have taken someone, weeks to get through, is able to kind of pull it together instantly. And so the last thing is like radical candor. I think as we get more and more noise, you're going to see that there's going to be a ton of content out there. And the ones who stand out are the ones who are going to be going against the grain. And so think about AI in ways that you can do things out of the box, in ways that you can, instead of just taking a script, throwing it in there, generating pieces of results, like what are the ways that you can do things differently? And I think that's going to be what stands out as like content is just going to continue flooding over and over and over. Now, there were some interesting use cases, and I kind of skipped over them earlier, but like some use cases for organizations that I see AI doing really, really well for, and we kind of mentioned this, was image generation in terms of like stock photography. One of my friends is working with an organization that helps moms, and whether they're on that edge of keeping their baby or not, and they've got situations that are really complex with their family members. Stock photography is not possible to get. Like, we have to protect people's identity, like for, sensitive cultural situations where you want to show faces from around the world. That's a great use case for showing stock photography and using AI to generate that. Generative AI can do that, and you can dial in those prompts on certain platforms. Like in the bonus slides, I've got 2 platforms that I've used and can recommend in terms of getting those pictures created. An interesting use case here is that we're working with the Assemblies of God, and they were using AI to replace faces. So we're actually doing videos, and they used AI to do face replacement in photography and in video, so they could use that footage and still protect people's identity. I think that's fascinating and a fantastic use of AI kind of looking forward. Another piece that is an interesting use case is audiobooks. If you've been online and you've seen these audiobooks, there's a guy, Neil Patel. He's infamous for being in like the SEO world and digital marketing. Recently got his book, and I got to the end of that book, and I was like, his voice cadence was a little bit unique, right? You could tell like it was his voice, 100%. I've heard Neil's voice before. That's him, but the cadence was a little off. But I listened to that whole thing at 1.25 anyway. It didn't really bother me. So I got to the very end, and all of a sudden I heard Voices by 11 Labs. And that might not mean anything to everyone, but I knew 11 Labs is the voice recreation website where you can give them a 5-minute model of your voice, just upload a 5-minute recording. And then after that, it's got a model of your voice, and it will spit out any audio that you want. You can dial in the timing, the pace, the tone, the pitch, but it's going to take your 5-minute sample. Like, you could just take 5 minutes of me talking here, put it in there, and all of a sudden it's going to recreate my voice perfectly. And so that's a crazy use. Like, if you're leadership of your team, like if you know they're not going to sit down to record that audiobook that they've been wanting to do for months, like this is a fantastic opportunity to say, take the manuscript, upload it, and you can create audiobooks. You can create podcasts out of the written text using their voice, and it's effective. and it's going to allow you to amplify content in a really, really cool way. Another thing that is useful that you'll see more and more of kind of going forwards is like AI video, where you can recreate an avatar. So you can recreate your face, your likeness, all of those pieces. And then all of a sudden you can then create video content en masse. Now, personally, I think that's best effective for trainings. Like if you have to do missionary trainings, let's say in that content, and you don't have access to a professional studio, and then every time you want to make a change to that training, like you have to go back into that really nice studio. I think trainings is a great use for AI video because it's still engaging. You still can do cool backgrounds. You can move it around. You can do all the video editing that you normally would, but it saves you that time of having to get into the physical studio and record all of those. And so that's a really cool use of things like synesthesia, for example. And then you'll see more of those coming, popping up left and right as we go forward. One of the other things that I just added to the resource list that I tested out recently is this thing called Opus Clip. And Opus Clip is fantastic. It's this, you upload let's say you record the 40-minute video, or you could even take this webinar, take the recording from it, go to Opus Clip, upload the whole thing, and it's going to output 1-minute clips or 40-second clips for social media that have captions on them. And you can have keywords that are put in there that it's looking for. So let's just say we want to target things like AI, we want to target communications, we want to target missions, we want to target prompts. All of a sudden, it's going to go through this whole recording and pull out 40-second clips that best support those keywords and have that specific thing. It's going to be vertical. It's going to be great for social media. And so anytime like you've recorded a podcast or you've recorded one long form piece of content, you're going to take it to a platform like Opus Clip. And literally in 30 minutes, I was able to download like 25 different clips instead and just have that instantly. And so I think in those situations, that is where you can start streamlining your communications process. You can amplify this omni-channel approach, but it's also very specific to what you're trying to communicate. And it's intentional. Like it would take 20 hours to go through a 40-minute piece and pull out all of those clips, get it subtitled, and then export all of them, make sure it's the right framing. And it instantly did all of that in 30 seconds. Of course, you got to dial it in and like double check the ins and outs, but it saves so much time. I think that's a fantastic example. The other piece would be like A/B testing. I would encourage everyone to A/B test email marketing, A/B test with AI and then without, or use AI and then have it create two versions for you with specific intent. Say like, I want to talk to this donor type and I want to talk to this donor type. And then let it go out. Of course, do the fact check and go through and make sure it's still on brand and on voice, and then send that out and start testing that over the period of about a month, about 2 months, and making sure that it's going in the right direction. So those are some fun use cases, ideas. So conclusion, next steps. So going back, use the IC framework where you're identifying where in your communication strategy that you could use AI, where do you need it in your communications team, where are the gaps, find the suitable platforms, integrate them and measure. So I've got a whole bunch of like out of the box ideas and some bonus slides available at creativenomads.com/missio, or you can scan that little QR code with your phone and it will pull up. And then at the bottom of that, there's a whole bunch of links to some resources. So like I talk about the Opus Clip. I didn't also talk about this, and I should have, but Jasper is a great alternative to ChatGPT that allows you to create a voice guide. So in Jasper, kind of like what we talked about, having that brand voice, you can have some pre-saved brand guides that are in jasper.ai, and it has a whole bunch of communication templates inside of Jasper that you can use and invite your team members to use. So like I created, what's really cool is you can upload a PDF document to create your voice guide. So let's say you already have a voice guide for your organization, you can just upload that to Jasper and it will create one, or you can give it a website. So like a lot of times I've just taken the homepage of a website that clearly communicates who it is and what they do, uploaded that, and that's become the voice guide. Jasper is a really cool platform for that. And there's just a ton of things going out and coming out, and so Some other questions that people have is usually there's a bias in AI. Be careful of that. There's a limitation, and will Google penalize it? Google has recently come out and said they will not penalize AI, especially because they have their own AI connected to it. But it is still prioritizing content that best answers people's questions. So SEO, in terms of that, is still king. Optimizing for the original question that someone is asking. So whenever you're doing your SEO, just always go back into the play of like, what is the question that people are asking? You can get that in your search kit, and then go back to that and then answer that question. And it's not going to be penalized if it's AI, especially if you go through this personalization framework. All right. I think that is what I have.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. We'll have some Q&A here. Oh, we've already got some questions. Good. Excellent. So Tim is asking, what's a good place for a small organization to test AI?
It's a great question, Tim. I would start with ChatGPT because it's free. And then, so if you download those slides, you'll be able to get access to like a list of recommended resources. And some of these all have a free trial. So I think Jasper even has like a free trial that you can test out. But I would go with ChatGPT. And then as you go through that process, like you'll be able to go back and forth, test it. There's some for image generation. Midjourney AI is really good. I've used Midjourney before. There's a few other like Dall-E, but like getting into it is a little bit more technical. But Midjourney, I think I'm spending $30 a month, which as long as you're using it and getting more than 3 stock images out of it, that kind of proves its cost, because a typical stock image might cost you $10 a month or something along those lines. But just kind of those limitations. And then you can get a whole bunch of different prompts that you can look up for, like, what should your prompts be from Midjourney? And you can get some wild results from that are really great. Photorealistic even. Like you won't be able to tell the difference between a photo and what it's creating. Our services, should I answer that? Jasper, worth the cost of using free GPT? I would say yes. We're paying for that for us just because of the voice guide. And technically you could just upgrade your ChatGPT to, so if you don't pay for ChatGPT, you're going to get limited access to GPT-4, which is the latest version of the AI. And I don't know if everyone has used the difference between 3 and 4, but 4 or 3.5, 4 is so much better. Like 4 has like 1 million times more data points that it's processing the information through. And so level 4, you only get access if you're paying like their $20 a month paid level for ChatGPT. So I would at least upgrade to that. And that allows for the plugins that I was talking about for ChatGPT, which you can then get like research, and you can get some image generation prompts into that piece. And it really like amplifies what ChatGPT can do.
We've got another question here from John. He says, is there an AI that can at least partially automate the creation of static landing pages, maximizing the impact?
Yes, there are a few that are for free. Bing's chat uses ChatGPT. Yeah, so Bing technically owns ChatGPT. Microsoft does, so that's why it can pull some of those things in. But all right, so let me answer that question on the static landing pages. Yes, there are a few of those. I don't necessarily have them right off the top of my head. I have them, I don't know if I put them on the list. There's one platform called Relume that uses AI and then ties into Webflow. And so they have you can use AI to build your, actually I have it on my phone. Crap, my phone's right there. If you email me, I will get you what that last platform is for the landing pages that I found. Because yeah, so there's the handout for this slide deck and then the bonus ones there. But I just recently found one that will build landing pages, because we do a lot of web development. And so for us, it's like, what's that balance between custom web development and like a quick landing page so you guys can iterate and test? And I think for like certain short-term campaigns, totally makes sense to just be able to throw up a landing page within 30 minutes. That would be wild. And it is possible.
John has a comment here. A possible tip for listeners is to check out appsumo.com, who have fairly regular deals on a variety of tools, but also includes AI solutions fairly regularly.
Yes. Be careful on AppSumo. I have spent more money than I want to admit on AppSumo, but that is a great platform. In fact, I have that on my list of recommended resources. AppSumo, there's also another platform called Product Hunt where people will launch their new products and new solutions out for people to see, and they'll like get hunted by other people and say, hey, go check this out. And that's where I'm saying like there's AI solutions coming out left and right. And so like on AppSumo, you'll see AI for lead generation. So imagine like donor acquisition, utilizing like AI doing that outreach for you. Obviously, like, again, going back to like, how do you keep relationship? Like you want to dial that prompts in so much that it feels like a real person, and you can, you just have to make sure you train that AI really, really well, so it doesn't like go off the rails.
I've got another comment and question from Gwen. She says, I'm still new to AI, trying to wrap my mind around basic questions like why we're training computers to write for us instead of using our brains. And she puts a smiley face. You've mentioned some applications such as pulling video clips from a presentation or creating avatars to protect someone's identity. Is there, she says in quotes, a bonehead's guide to AI for mission staff?
So like, yes, if you download my slides, I put a few different use cases, and then hopefully this webinar helped give some specific use cases. Is there one like a holistic of like what are every possible use case of AI for missions? No, because that's a really comprehensive list, because you could go down rabbit holes of so many different ways, and I think your imagination is the limit, right?
Do you have a recommendation for a basic guide just to AI in general that people could find, like an AI for dummies?
I don't know if there is an AI. Well, I'm sure there is an AI for dummies. HubSpot, the one that's coming out, they have an ebook all about how to use AI, that it has a really good, basically walks you through AI using Generate to scale your content operations. I have the PDF that I just downloaded from HubSpot actually today. So that's a great one. They have a playbook. HubSpot partnered with Jasper and kind of wrote this out, and it covers a lot of things like prompts, how to use it in your content strategy, the limitations of it, warnings of bias, like a lot of things that we talked about here. It covers a lot of those pieces. And it also talks about like how to roll out AI to your team, right? Because you're going to want to give parameters to your team of how they should be using AI. And like, I feel like, and this isn't the case yet either, right? But there will be probably like policies and procedures around utilizing AI within your organization. Because I could see there's being a danger of like just letting AI do your job for you without doing any fact checking. And then like that could potentially put some dangerous information out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So always fact check.
Yes, definitely. I support that 100%. Daniel asks, what services do you offer organizations? I think, Daniel, maybe you can follow up with Jason about that. You can email him afterwards. Yep. Do you work with small organizations? I'm going to let you go ahead and follow up by email on that. And I think the answer to those things is yes. Curtis has posted a link about a theological discussion on AI from Ed Stetzer. You can find the link there. The link to the handout is posted in the chat here. I'm wondering, just along the lines that we've just been talking about, ethical guide. And as I'm thinking about it specifically for images, what kind of ethical things do you think people need to be doing if they're using AI generated images?
I honestly, you shortcut a lot of the ethical implications of AI or of images by doing it, created images, right? Because some of the issues that you might have using stock or created images is like, is this a real person? What situation is this image representing? But by using AI, like this image has never been created before. Like this is a unique image that you have dialed in, that you've literally set, and it's done the mathematical equations to put the pixels in this orientation. Like it is unique to the prompt that you put in there. And so I think obviously the same approach that you would have if we're being specific to images, I think it's actually safer, because you're not having like, there's too many people who just use like unlicensed images for their organization. Like how many people out there are just grabbing images off of Google and thinking that they can use that free reign and not giving credit to photographers? There's still like such a power of a real photo from a real situation. If you have permission and license to use it, it doesn't replace that yet. And I don't know if it necessarily will, but for things that are like impossible to capture with a camera, I think it's got tremendous value for organizations working in sensitive situations. And then the ethical guidelines would be, should you be showing this type of image? That's what you have to really be thinking through is still, does the context work? What is the emotion that we're evoking by putting this image out there? I think it's less about the AI and it's more about the context of the image and how you're using the image still. But outside of images, this is a reason, like the ethical piece and the theological implication is don't use AI to write your sermons. Like, I think that's it may not be given, but like you can use it to write an outline, like bullet points, and then you write the rest of it, right? Like it still needs to be inspired by the Holy Spirit and be led off of like scriptural, like fact check the scriptural backing for that. Like, I think that's a dangerous place. But if we're writing a social media post that's talking about an event or talking about like an upcoming thing or telling the story about how someone's life was transformed, fact check the theology, and don't rely upon it 100%. But I think it's marvelous for amplifying your communications and amplifying the amount of content that you need to create.
Would you recommend that people like put a notation of some kind that says, this was generated with AI, to just let people know?
I don't know if you need to, and if you're doing the right personalization and you're reading through it and doing the grammar checks, like it's been edited. And as long as if you are just creating content with AI and just throwing it out there as yourself, 100% go right. This is made with AI. But if you've personalized it, you've added value to it, you've done all of these steps, well, then it's a tool that you're using and you're welcome. I don't think Google requires it yet. And I don't know if people will actually even care. Because like if you have fact checked it, meaning like you've read through it and you know that this is good content and it adds value and it's not incorrect, it's adding value to me. I don't need to know if this was collected or put together by AI versus a person. I did have this conversation recently and someone said it's kind of, I think there will come a point back in the future where if you say this was written by a human, that it will actually have more value because of all of the people who are going to be using AI. Like everyone's going to, it's kind of like handmade versus machine made, right? Like now we're kind of drawn to things that was like handmade leather bags or, all of these things. I think at that point, then you're going to see people will have a bias towards like handwritten a little bit, or at least it'll have a little nostalgia. It'll have a little bit extra value, but it's kind of like it's that unique factor, right? It won't always add value, but it could.
Jason, is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
It's a huge topic with a lot of, ethical quandaries and rollouts and tons of ideas. Someone just posted a comment. And I think, there's a ton of things that are possible, especially when you're getting into the avatars and the recreations of things. I think I don't see, it's just a huge topic that we could go on and on and on about and like go into specific use cases. And I just have a lot of fun, like exploring the different use cases and helping to amplify, communication strategies and how organizations can use it and should use it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's so important for people to filter the new and shiny and make sure that they're finding the thing that really is helping their process, right? Like just because you can create an avatar video that, is telling the script, going back to the medium is the message, right? Like the way that you're telling the story does impact the way it's received. And so have that understanding of this is going to impact the way the message is communicated. And if you're using an avatar, it's going to affect that. And it could be cool. It could be kind of unique, especially if it's like animated avatar and people are like, oh, that's new. That's fun. That's fresh. But it also could be, distracting and jarring for your audience. So I think it requires a lot of intentionality there.
Great. I think we're ready to wrap up. So Jason, if you could stop sharing screen, then we can post up the closing slides. Curtis, if you want to bring those up. I'll go ahead. Yeah, here we go. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for what you shared with us today, Jason. This was really insightful. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Let's end the recording now.